on my hips. I just assisted in an 18-hour surgery. He bends down and kisses the heart tattoo on my collarbone. No wonder he's exhausted. How is that even possible? I say. 18 hours? He nods and then walks me to the side of the bed where he pulls me down next to him. We adjust ourselves until we're facing each other, sharing a pillow. Yeah, but it was amazing. Groundbreaking. They'll write about it in medical journals, and I got to be there, so I'm not complaining. I'm just really tired. I lean in and give him a peck on the mouth. He brings his hand to the side of my head and pulls back. I know you're probably ready to have hot, sweaty sex, but I don't have the energy tonight. I'm sorry. But I've missed you, and for some reason I sleep better when I sleep next to you. Is it okay that I'm here? I smile. It's more than okay. He leans in and kisses my forehead. He grabs my hand and then holds it between us on the pillow. His eyes close, but I keep mine open and stare at him. He has the type of face that people shy away from, because you could get lost in it. And to think, I get to look at this face all the time. I don't have to be modest and look away, because he's mine. Maybe. This is a trial run. I have to remember that. After a minute, he releases my hand and begins to flex his fingers. I look down at his hand and wonder what that must be like. To have to stand for so long and use your fine motor skills for 18 hours straight. I can't think of much else that would match that level of exhaustion. I slide out of the bed and retrieve some lotion out of my bathroom. I go back to the bed and sit cross-legged next to him. I squirt some lotion on my hand and then pull his arm to my lap. He opens his eyes and looks up at me. What are you doing? He mumbles. Shh. Go back to sleep, I say. I press my thumbs into the palm of his hand and rotate them upward and then out. His eyes fall shut and he groans into the pillow. I continue massaging his hand for about 5 minutes before switching to his other hand. He keeps his eyes closed the whole time. When I'm finished with his hands, I roll him onto his stomach and straddle his back. He assists me in pulling off his shirt, but his arms are like noodles. I massage his shoulders and his neck and his back and his arms. When I'm finished, I roll off of him and lie down beside him. I'm running my fingers through his hair and massaging his scalp when he opens his eyes. Lily, he whispers, looking at me sincerely. You just might be the best thing that's ever happened to me. Those words wrap around me like a warm blanket. I don't know what to say in response. He lifts a hand and gently cups my cheek, and I feel his stare deep in my stomach. Slowly, he leans forward and presses his lips to mine. I expect a peck, but he doesn't pull back. The tip of his tongue slides across my lips, parting them softly. His mouth is so warm, I moan as his kiss grows deeper. He rolls me onto my back and then drags his hand down my body, straight to my hip. He moves closer, sliding his hand down my thigh. He pushes against me and a surge of heat shoots inside me. I grab a fistful of his hair and whisper against his mouth. I think we've waited long enough. I would very much like for you to fuck me now. He practically growls with a renewed sense of energy and begins to pull my shirt off. It becomes an interlude of hands and moans and tongues and sweat. I feel like this is the first time I've ever been touched by a man. The few who came before him were all boys, nervous hands and timid mouths. But Ryle is all confidence. He knows exactly where to touch me and exactly how to kiss me. The only time he's not giving my body his undivided attention is when he reaches to the floor and fishes a condom out of his wallet. Once he's back under the covers and the condom is in place, he doesn't even hesitate. He takes me brazenly in one swift thrust and I gasp into his mouth, every muscle in me tensing. His mouth is fierce and needy, kissing me everywhere he can reach. I grow so dizzy, I can do nothing but succumb to him. He's unapologetic in the way he fucks me. His hand comes between my headboard and the top of my head as he pushes harder and harder, the bed crashing against the wall with every push. My fingernails dig into the skin of his back as he buries his face against my neck. "Ryle," I whisper. "Oh, God," I say. "Ryle." I scream. And then I bite down on his shoulder to muffle every sound that comes after it. My whole body feels it, from my head to my toes, and back up again. I'm afraid I might literally pass out for a moment, so I tighten my legs around him and he tenses. "Jesus, Lily." His body ripples with tremors, and he shoves against me one last time. He groans, stilling himself on top of me. His body jerks with his release and my head falls back against the pillow. It's a full minute before either of us is able to move. And even then, we choose not to. He presses his face into the pillow and lets out a deep sigh. I can't. He pulls back and looks down at me. His eyes are full of something. I don't know what. He presses his lips to mine and then says, "You were so right." "About what?" He slowly pulls out of me, coming down on his forearms. "You warned me. You said one time with you wouldn't be enough. You said you were like a drug. But you failed to tell me you were the most addictive kind." Chapter 10. Can I ask you a personal question? Alyssa nods as she perfects a bouquet of flowers about to go out for delivery. We're 3 days away from our grand opening, and it just keeps getting busier by the day. "What is it?" Alyssa asks, facing me. She leans into the counter and starts picking at her fingernails. "You don't have to answer it if you don't want to," I warn. "Well, I can't answer it if you don't ask it." "That's a good point. Do you and Marshall donate to charity?" Confusion crosses her face and she says, "Yeah." "Why?" I shrug. "I was just curious. I wouldn't judge you or anything. I've just been thinking lately about how I might like to start a charity." "What kind of charity?" she asks. "We donate to a few different ones now that we have money, but my favorite is this one we got involved with last year. They build schools in other countries. We've funded 3 new constructions in the past year alone." I knew I liked her for a reason. I don't have that kind of money, obviously, but I'd like to do something. I just don't know what yet. "Let's get through this grand opening first and then you can start thinking about philanthropy. One dream at a time, Lily." She walks around the counter and grabs the trash can. I watch as she pulls the full bag out of it and ties it in a knot. It makes me wonder why, if she has people for everything, she would even want a job where she had to take out the trash and get her hands dirty. "Why do you work here?" I ask her. She glances up at me and smiles. "Because I like you," she says. But then I notice the smile completely leave her eyes right before she turns and walks toward the back to throw out the trash. When she comes back, I'm still watching her curiously. I say it again. "Alyssa, why do you work here?" She stops what she's doing and takes in a slow breath like maybe she's contemplating being honest with me. She walks back to the counter and leans against it, crossing her feet at her ankles. "Because," she says, looking down at her feet, "I can't get pregnant. We've been trying for 2 years but nothing has worked. I was tired of sitting at home crying all the time, so I decided I should find something to keep my mind busy." She stands up straight and wipes her hands across her jeans. "And you, Lily Bloom, are keeping me very busy." She turns and starts messing with the same bouquet of flowers again. She's been perfecting them for half an hour. She picks up a card and stuffs it in the flowers, and then turns around and hands me the vase. "These are for you, by the way." It's obvious Alyssa wants to change the subject, so I take the flowers from her. "What do you mean?" She rolls her eyes and waves me off to my office. "It's on the card. Go read it." I can tell by her annoyed reaction that they're from Ryle. I grin and run to my office. I take a seat at my desk and pull out the card. Lily. I'm having serious withdrawals. Ryle. I smile and put the card back in the envelope. I grab my phone and snap a picture of me holding the flowers with my tongue sticking out. I text it to Ryle. Me, I tried to warn you. He immediately starts texting me back. I watch anxiously as the dots on my phone move back and forth. Ryle, I need my next fix. I'll be finished here in about 30 minutes. Can I take you to dinner? Me, can't. Mom wants me to try a new restaurant with her tonight. She's an obnoxious foodie. Ryle, I like food. I eat food. Where are you taking her? Me, a place called Bibs on Market Sun. Ryle, is there room for one more? I stare at his text for a moment. He wants to meet my mother? We aren't even officially dating. I mean, I don't care if he meets my mother. She would love him. But he went from not wanting anything to do with relationships, to possibly agreeing to test drive one, to meeting the parents, all within 5 days? Good God. I really am a drug. Me, sure. Meet us there in half an hour. I walk out of my office and straight up to Alyssa. I hold my phone in front of her face. He wants to meet my mother. Who? Ryle. My brother, she says, looking as shocked as I feel. I nod. Your brother. My mother. She grabs my phone and looks at the texts. Huh. That's so weird. I take my phone from her hands. Thanks for the vote of confidence. She laughs and says, you know what I mean. It's Ryle we're talking about here. He's never, in the history of being Ryle Kincaid, met a girl's parents. Of course hearing her say that makes me smile, but then I wonder if maybe he's doing this just to please me. If maybe he's doing things he doesn't really want to do just because he knows I want a relationship. And then I smile even bigger, because isn't that what it's all about? Sacrificing for the person you like so that you can see them happy? Your brother must really like me, I say teasingly. I look back up at Alyssa, expecting her to laugh, but there's a solemn look on her face. She nods and says, yeah. I'm afraid he does. She grabs her purse from beneath the counter and says, I'm gonna head out now. Let me know how it goes, okay? She moves past me and I watch her as she makes her way out the door, and then I just stare at the door for a long time. It bothers me that she doesn't seem excited about the prospect of me dating Ryle. It makes me wonder if that has more to do with her feelings toward me or her feelings toward him. 20 minutes later, I flip the sign to closed. Just a few more days. I lock the door and walk to my car, but stop short when I see someone leaning against it. It takes me a moment to recognize him. He's facing the other direction, talking on his cell phone. I thought he was meeting me at the restaurant, but okay. The horn beeps on my car when I hit the unlock button, and Ryle spins around. He grins when he sees me. Yes, I agree, he says into the phone. He wraps an arm around my shoulder and pulls me against him, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. We'll talk about it tomorrow, he says. Something really important just came up. He hangs up the phone and slides it into his pocket, then he kisses me. It's not a hello kiss. It's an I've been thinking about you nonstop kiss. He wraps both arms around me and spins me until I'm backed up against my car, where he continues to kiss me until I start to feel dizzy again. When he pulls back, he's looking down at me appreciatively. You know which part of you drives me the craziest? He brings his fingers to my mouth and traces my smile. These, he says. Your lips. I love how they're as red as your hair and you don't even have to wear lipstick. I grin and kiss his fingers. I better watch you around my mom, then, because everyone says we have the same mouth. He pauses his fingers against my lips and he stops smiling. Lily. Just, no. I laugh and open my door. Are we taking separate cars? He pulls the door open for me the rest of the way and says, I took an Uber here from work. We'll ride together. My mother is already seated at a table when we arrive. Her back is to the door as I lead the way. I'm instantly impressed by the restaurant. My eyes are drawn to the warm, neutral colors painted on the walls and the almost full-size tree in the middle of the restaurant. It looks like it's growing straight out of the floor, almost as if the entire restaurant was designed around the tree. Ryle follows closely behind me with his hand on my lower back. Once we reach the table, I begin to pull off my jacket. Hey, Mom. She looks up from her phone and says, Oh, hey, honey. She drops her phone in her purse and waves her hand around the restaurant. I already love it. Look at the lighting, she says, pointing up. The fixtures look like something you'd grow in one of your gardens. That's when she notices Ryle, who is standing patiently next to me as I slide into the booth. My mother smiles at him and says, We'll take 2 waters for now, please. My eyes dart to Ryle and then back to my mother. Mom. He's with me. He's not the waiter. She looks up at Ryle again with confusion. He just smiles and reaches out his hand. Honest mistake, ma'am. I'm Ryle Kincaid. She returns the handshake, looking back and forth between us. He releases her hand and slides into the booth. She looks a little flustered when she finally says, Jenny Bloom. Nice to meet you. She places her attention back on me and raises an eyebrow. A friend of yours, Lily? I can't believe I'm not better prepared for this moment. What in the heck do I introduce him as? My trial run? I can't say boyfriend, but I can't very well say friend. Prospect seems a little dated. Ryle notices my pause, so he puts his hand on my knee and squeezes reassuringly. My sister works for Lily, he says. Have you met her? Alyssa? My mother leans forward in her booth and says, Oh. Yes. Of course. You two look so much alike now that you mention it, she says. It's the eyes, I think. And the mouth. He nods. We both favor our mother. My mother smiles at me. People always say they think Lily favors me. Yes, he says. Identical mouths. Uncanny. Ryle squeezes my knee under the table again while I try and suppress my laughter. Ladies, if you'll excuse me, I need to head to the gentleman's room. He leans in and kisses me on the side of the head before standing. If the waiter comes, I'll just take water. My mother's eyes follow Ryle as he walks away, and then she slowly turns back to me. She points at me and then to his empty seat. How come I haven't heard about this guy? I smile a little. Things are it's not really, I have no idea how to explain our situation to my mother. He works a lot, so we haven't really spent that much time together. At all. This is actually the first time we've been to dinner together. My mother raises an eyebrow. Really, she says, leaning back in her seat. He sure doesn't treat it like that. I mean, he seems comfortably affectionate with you. Not normal behavior with someone you've just met. We didn't just meet, I say. It's been almost a year since the first time I met him. And we've spent time together, just not on a date. He works a lot. Where does he work? Massachusetts General Hospital. My mother leans forward and her eyes practically bulge from her head. Lily, she hisses. He's a doctor? I nod, suppressing my grin. A neurosurgeon. Can I get you ladies something to drink? A waiter asks. Yeah, I say. We'll take 3. And then I clamp my mouth shut. I stare at the waiter and the waiter stares back at me. My heart is in my throat. I can't remember how to speak. Lily, my mother says. She flicks her hand toward the waiter. He's waiting for your drink order. I shake my head and begin to stutter. I'll. 3 waters, my mother says, interrupting my fumbled words. The waiter snaps out of his trance long enough to tap his pencil on his pad of paper. 3 waters, he says. Got it. He turns and walks away, but I watch as he glances back at me before pushing through the doors to the kitchen. My mother leans forward and says, "What in the world is wrong with you?" I point over my shoulder. "The waiter," I say, shaking my head. He looked exactly like. I'm about to say, Atlas Corrigan, when Ryle walks up and slides back into the seat. He glances back and forth between us. What did I miss? I swallow hard, shaking my head. Surely that wasn't really Atlas. But those eyes, his mouth. I know it's been years since I saw him, but I'll never forget what he looked like. It had to be him. I know it was, and I know he recognized me, too, because the second our eyes met, it looked like he'd seen a ghost. Lily? Ryle says, squeezing my hand. You okay? I nod and force a smile, then clear my throat. Yep. We were just talking about you, I say, glancing back at my mother. Ryle assisted in an 18-hour surgery this week. My mother leans forward with interest. Ryle begins to tell her all about the surgery. Our water arrives, but it's a different waiter this time. He asks if we've had a chance to go over the menu and then tells us the chef's specials. The 3 of us order our food and I'm doing everything I can to focus, but my attention is all over the restaurant looking for Atlas. I need to regroup. After a few minutes, I lean over to Ryle. I need to run to the restroom. He stands up to let me out and my eyes are scanning the face of every waiter as I make my way across the room. I push through the door to the hallway that leads to the restrooms. As soon as I'm alone, my back meets the wall of the hallway. I lean forward and release a huge breath. I decide to take a moment and regain my composure before heading back out there. I bring my hands up to my forehead and close my eyes. For 9 years I've wondered what happened to him. Years. Lily? I glance up and suck in a breath. He's standing at the end of the hallway like a ghost straight out of the past. My eyes travel to his feet to make sure he's not suspended in the air. He isn't. He's real, and he's standing right in front of me. I stay pressed against the wall, not sure what to say to him. Atlas? As soon as I say his name, he blows out a quick breath of relief and then takes 3 huge steps forward. I catch myself doing the same. We meet in the middle and throw our arms around each other. Holy shit, he says, holding me in a tight embrace. I nod. Yeah. Holy shit. He puts his hands on my shoulders and takes a step back to look at me. You haven't changed at all. I cover my mouth with my hand, still in shock, and give him the once-over. His face looks the same, but he's no longer the scrawny teenager I remember. I can't say the same for you. He looks down at himself and laughs. Yeah, he says. 8 years in the military will do that to ya. We're both in shock, so nothing is said right after that. We just keep shaking our heads in disbelief. He laughs and then I laugh. Finally, he releases my shoulders and folds his arms over his chest. What brings you to Boston? He asks. He says it so casually, and I'm thankful for that. Maybe he doesn't remember our conversation all those years ago about Boston, which would save me a lot of embarrassment. I live here, I say, forcing my answer to sound as casual as his question. I own a flower shop over on Park Plaza. He smiles knowingly, like it doesn't at all surprise him. I glance toward the door, knowing I should get back out there. He notices and then takes another step back. He holds my gaze for a moment and it gets really quiet. Way too quiet. There's so much to say, but neither of us even knows where to start. The smile leaves his eyes for a moment and then he motions toward the door. You should probably get back to your company, he says. I'll look you up sometime. You said Park Plaza, right? I nod. He nods. The door swings open and a woman walks in holding a toddler. She moves between us, which puts even more distance between us. I take a step toward the door, but he remains in the same spot. Before I walk out, I turn back to him and smile. It was really good to see you, Atlas. He smiles a little, but it doesn't touch his eyes. Yeah. You too, Lily. I'm mostly quiet for the rest of the meal. I'm not sure Ryle or my mother even notice, though, because she's having no issue firing question after question at him. He takes it like a champ. He's very charming with my mother in all the right ways. Unexpectedly running into Atlas tonight put such a wrinkle in my emotions, but by the end of dinner, Ryle has smoothed them back out again. My mother takes her napkin and wipes her mouth, then points at me. New favorite restaurant, she says. Incredible. Ryle nods. I agree. I need to bring Alyssa here. She loves trying new restaurants. The food really is good, but the last thing I need is for either of these two to want to come back here. It was okay, I say. He pays for our meals, of course, and then insists we walk my mother to her car. I can already tell she'll be calling me about him tonight, simply by the prideful look on her face. Once she's gone, Ryle walks me to my car. I requested an Uber so you wouldn't have to go out of your way to take me home. We have approximately, he looks down at his phone, 1.5 minutes to make out. I laugh. He wraps his arms around me and kisses my neck first, and then my cheek. I would invite myself over, but I have an early surgery tomorrow and I'm sure my patient would appreciate it if I didn't spend the majority of the night inside you. I kiss him back, both disappointed and relieved he's not coming over. I have a grand opening in a few days. I should probably sleep, too. When's your next day off, he says. Never. When's yours? Never. I shake my head. We're doomed. There's just too much drive and success between the two of us. That means the honeymoon phase will last until we're 80, he says. I'll come to your grand opening Friday and then the four of us will go out and celebrate. A car pulls up beside us and he wraps his hand in my hair and kisses me. Goodbye. Your mother is wonderful, by the way. Thank you for letting me come to dinner. He backs away and climbs inside the car. I watch as it pulls out of the parking lot. I have a really good feeling about that man. I smile and turn toward my car, but throw a hand up to my chest and gasp when I see him. Atlas is standing at the rear of my car. Sorry. Wasn't trying to scare you. I blow out a breath. Well, you did. I lean against the car and Atlas stays where he is, 3 feet away from me. He looks out at the street. So? Who's the lucky guy? My voice falters. This is all so weird. My chest is still constricted and my stomach is flipping, and I can't tell if it's leftover nerves from kissing Ryle or if it's the presence of Atlas. His name is Ryle. We met about a year ago. I instantly regret saying we met that long ago. It makes it sound like Ryle and I have been dating that long and we aren't even officially dating. What about you? Married? Have a girlfriend? I'm not sure if I'm asking to extend the conversation he started or if I'm genuinely curious. I do, actually. Her name is Cassie. We've been together almost a year now. Heartburn. I think I have heartburn. A year? I place my hand on my chest and nod. That's good. You seem happy. Does he seem happy? I have no idea. Yeah. Well. I'm really glad I got to see you, Lily. He turns around to walk away, but then spins and faces me again, his hands shoved in his back pockets. I will say. I kind of wish this could have happened a year ago. I wince at his words, trying not to let them penetrate. He turns and walks back toward the restaurant. I fumble with my keys and hit the button to unlock the car. I slide in and pull the door shut, gripping the steering wheel. For whatever reason, a huge tear falls down my cheek. A huge, pathetic, what the hell is this wetness tear? I swipe at it and push the button to start my car. I didn't expect to feel this much hurt after seeing him. But it's good. This happened for a reason. My heart needed closure so I can give it to Ryle, but maybe I couldn't do that until this happened. This is good. Yes, I'm crying. But it'll feel better. This is just human nature, healing an old wound to prepare for a fresh new layer. That's all. Chapter 11. I curl up in my bed and stare at it. I'm almost finished with it. There aren't very many more entries. I pick up the journal and place it on the pillow beside me. I'm not going to read you, I whisper. Although, if I read what's left, I'll be finished. Having seen Atlas tonight and knowing he has a girlfriend and a job and more than likely a home is enough closure I need on that chapter. And if I just finish the damn journal, I can put it back in the shoebox and never have to open it again. I finally pick it up and roll onto my back. Ellen DeGeneres, you are such a bitch. Dear Ellen. Just keep swimming. Recognize that quote, Ellen? It's what Dory says to Marlin in Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. I'm not a huge fan of cartoons, but I'll give you props for that one. I like cartoons that can make you laugh, but also make you feel something. After today, I think that's my favorite cartoon. Because I've been feeling like drowning lately, and sometimes people need a reminder that they just need to keep swimming. Atlas got sick. Like really sick. He's been crawling through my window and sleeping on the floor for a few nights in a row now, but last night, I knew something was wrong as soon as I looked at him. It was a Sunday, so I hadn't seen him since the night before, but he looked awful. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin was pale, and even though it was cold, his hair was sweaty. I didn't even ask if he was feeling okay, I already knew he wasn't. I put my hand on his forehead and he was so hot, I almost yelled for my mother. He said, I'll be fine, Lily, and then he started to make his palette on the floor. I told him to wait there and then I went to the kitchen and poured him a glass of water. I found some medicine in the cabinet. It was flu medicine and I wasn't even sure if that's what was wrong with him, but I made him take some anyway. He laid there on the floor, curled up into a ball, when, about half an hour later he said, Lily? I think I'm gonna need a trash can. I jumped up and grabbed the trash can from under my desk and knelt down in front of him. As soon as I set it down, he hunched over it and started throwing up. God, I felt bad for him. Being so sick and not having a bathroom or a bed or a house or a mother. All he had was me and I didn't even know what to do for him. When he was finished, I made him drink some water and then I told him to get on the bed. He refused, but I wasn't having it. I put the trash can on the floor next to the bed and made him move to the bed. He was so hot and shaking so bad I was just scared to leave him on the floor. I laid down next to him and every hour for the next 6 hours he continued getting sick. I kept having to take the trash can to the bathroom to empty it out. I'm not gonna lie, it was gross. The grossest night I've ever had, but what else could I do? He needed me to help him and I was all he had. When it came time for him to leave my room this morning, I told him to go back to his house and I'd be over to check on him before school. I'm surprised he even had the energy to crawl out of my window. I left the trash can next to my bed and waited for my mom to come wake me up. When she did, she saw the trash can and immediately held her hand to my forehead. Lily, are you okay? I groaned and shook my head. No. I was up all night sick. I think it's over now, but I haven't slept. She picked up the trash can and told me to stay in bed, that she'd call the school and let them know I wasn't coming. After she left for work, I went and got Atlas and told him he could stay with me at the house all day. He was still getting sick, so I let him use my room to sleep. I check on him every half hour or so, and finally around lunch he stopped throwing up. He went and took a shower, and then I made him some soup. He was too tired to even eat it. I got a blanket and we both sat down on the couch and covered up together. I don't know when I started feeling comfortable enough to snuggle up to him, but it just felt right. A few minutes later, he leaned over a little and pressed his lips against my collarbone, right between my shoulder and my neck. It was a quick kiss, and I don't think he meant for it to be romantic. It was more like a thank you gesture, without using actual words. But it made me feel all kinds of things. It's been a few hours now and I keep touching that spot with my fingers because I can still feel it. I know it was probably the worst day of his life, Ellen. But it was one of my favorites. I feel really bad about that. We watched Finding Nemo, and when that part came up where Marlin was looking for Nemo and he was feeling really defeated, Dory said to him, "When life gets you down, do you want to know what you've got to do? Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming, swimming, swimming." Atlas grabbed my hand when Dory said that. He didn't hold it like a boyfriend holds his girlfriend's hand. He squeezed it, like he was saying that was us. He was Marlin and I was Dory, and I was helping him swim. "Just keep swimming," I whispered to him. "Lily. Dear Ellen. I'm scared. So scared. I like him a lot. He's all I think about when we're together, and I feel worried sick about him when we're not. My life is beginning to revolve around him, and that's not good, I know. But I can't help it, and I don't know what to do about it, and now he might leave. He left after we finished watching Finding Nemo yesterday, and then when my parents went to bed, he crawled in my window last night. He had slept in my bed the night before because he was sick, and I know I shouldn't have done it, but I put his blankets in the washing machine right before I went to bed. He asked where his pallet was, and I told him he'd have to sleep on the bed again because I wanted to wash his blankets and make sure they were clean so he wouldn't get sick again. For a minute, it looked like he was going to go back out the window. But then he shut it and took off his shoes and crawled in the bed with me. He wasn't sick anymore, but when he laid down I thought maybe I had gotten sick because my stomach felt queasy. But I wasn't sick. I just always feel queasy when he's that close to me. We were facing each other on the bed when he said, "When do you turn 16? 2 more months, I whispered. We just kept staring at each other, and my heart was beating faster and faster. "When do you turn 19? I asked, just trying to make conversation so he couldn't hear how hard I was breathing. "Not until October," he said. I nodded. I wondered why he was curious about my age, and it made me wonder what he thought about 15-year-olds. Did he look at me like I was just a little kid? Like a little sister? I was almost 16, and 2.5 years apart in age isn't that bad. Maybe when two people are 15 and 18, it might seem a little too far apart. But once I turned 16, I bet no one would even think twice about a 2.5-year age difference. "I need to tell you something," he said. I held my breath, not knowing what he was going to say. "I got in touch with my uncle today. My mom and I used to live with him in Boston. He told me once he gets back from his work trip I can stay with him." I should have been so happy for him in that moment. I should have smiled and told him congratulations. But I felt all of the immaturity of my age when I closed my eyes and felt sorry for myself. "Are you going?" I asked. He shrugged. "I don't know. I wanted to talk to you about it first." He was so close to me on the bed, I could feel the warmth of his breath. I also noticed he smelled like mint, and it made me wonder if he uses bottled water to brush his teeth before he comes over here. I always send him home every day with lots of water. I brought my hand up to the pillow and started pulling at a feather sticking out of it. When I got it all the way out, I twisted it between my fingers. "I don't know what to say, Atlas. I'm happy you have a place to stay. But what about school? I could finish down there, he said. I nodded. It sounded like he already made up his mind. When are you leaving? I wondered how far away Boston is. It's probably a few hours, but that's a whole world away when you don't own a car. I don't know for sure that I am. I dropped the feather back onto the pillow and brought my hand to my side. What's stopping you? Your uncle is offering you a place to stay. That's good, right? He tightened his lips together and nodded. Then he picked up the feather I'd been playing with and he started twisting it between his fingers. He laid it back down on the pillow and then he did something I wasn't expecting. He moved his fingers to my lips and he touched them. God, Ellen. I thought I was gonna die right then and there. It was the most I'd ever felt inside my body at one time. He kept his fingers there for a few seconds, and he said, "Thank you, Lily. For everything." He moved his fingers up and through my hair, and then he leaned forward and planted a kiss on my forehead. I was breathing so hard, I had to open my mouth to catch more air. I could see his chest moving just as hard as mine was. He looked down at me and I watched as his eyes went right to my mouth. Have you ever been kissed, Lily? I shook my head no and tilted my face up to his because I needed him to change that right then and there or I wasn't gonna be able to breathe. Then, almost as if I were made of eggshells, he lowered his mouth to mine and just rested it there. I didn't know what to do next, but I didn't care. I didn't care if we just stayed like that all night and never even moved our mouths, it was everything. His lips closed over mine and I could kind of feel his hand shaking. I did what he was doing and started to move my lips like he was. I felt the tip of his tongue brush across my lips once and I thought my eyes were about to roll back in my head. He did it again, and then a third time, so I finally did it, too. When our tongues touched for the first time, I kind of smiled a little, because I thought about my first kiss a lot. Where it would be, who it would be with. Never in a million years did I imagine it would feel like this. He pushed me on my back and pressed his hand against my cheek and kept kissing me. It just got better and better as I grew more comfortable. My favorite moment was when he pulled back for a second and looked down at me, then came back even harder. I don't know how long we kissed. A long time. So long, my mouth started to hurt and my eyes couldn't stay open. When we fell asleep, I'm pretty sure his mouth was still touching mine. We didn't talk about Boston again. I still don't know if he's leaving. Lily. Dear Ellen. I need to apologize to you. It's been a week since I've written to you and a week since I've watched your show. Don't worry, I still record it so you'll get the ratings, but every day we get off the bus, Atlas takes a quick shower and then we make out. Every day. It's awesome. I don't know what it is about him, but I feel so comfortable with him. He's so sweet and thoughtful. He never does anything I don't feel comfortable with, but so far he hasn't tried anything I don't feel comfortable with. I'm not sure how much I should divulge here, since you and I have never met in person. But let me just say that if he's ever wondered what my boobs feel like, now he knows. I can't for the life of me figure out how people function from day to day when they like someone this much. If it were up to me, we would kiss all day and all night and do nothing in between except maybe talk a little. He tells funny stories. I love it when he's in a talkative mood because it doesn't happen very often, but he uses his hands a lot. He smiles a lot, too, and I love his smile even more than I love his kiss. And sometimes I just tell him to shut up and stop smiling or kissing or talking so I can stare at him. I like looking at his eyes. They're so blue that he could be standing across a room and a person could tell how blue his eyes were. The only thing I don't like about kissing him sometimes is when he closes his eyes. And no. We still haven't talked about Boston. Lily. Dear Ellen. Yesterday afternoon when we were riding the bus, Atlas kissed me. It wasn't anything new to us because we had kissed a lot by this point, but it's the first time he ever did it in public. When we're together everything else just seems to fade away, so I don't think he even thought about other people noticing. but Katie noticed. She was sitting in the seat behind us and I heard her say, "Gross," as soon as he leaned over and kissed me. She was talking to the girl next to her when she said, "I can't believe Lily lets him touch her. He wears the same clothes almost every day." Ellen, I was so mad. I also felt awful for Atlas. He pulled away from me and I could tell what she said bothered him. I started to turn around to yell at her for judging someone she doesn't even know, but he grabbed my hand and shook his head no. "Don't, Lily," he said. So I didn't. But for the rest of the bus ride, I was so angry. I was angry that Katie would say something so ignorant just to hurt someone she thought was beneath her. I was also hurt that Atlas appeared to be used to comments like that. I didn't want him to think I was embarrassed that anyone saw him kiss me. I know Atlas better than any of them do, and I know what a good person he is, no matter what his clothes look like or that he used to smell before he started using my shower. I leaned over and kissed him on the cheek and then rested my head on his shoulder. "You know what?" I said to him. He slid his fingers through mine and squeezed my hand. "What?" "You're my favorite person." I felt him laugh a little and it made me smile. "Out of how many people?" he asked. "All of them." He kissed the top of my head and said, "You're my favorite person, too, Lily. By a long shot." When the bus came to a stop on my street, he didn't let go of my hand when we started to walk off. He was in front of me in the aisle and I was walking behind him, so he didn't see it when I turned around and flipped off Katie. I probably shouldn't have done it, but the look on her face made it worth it. When we got to my house, he took the house key out of my hand and unlocked my front door. It was weird, seeing how comfortable he is at my house now. He walked in and locked the door behind us. That's when we noticed the electricity in the house wasn't working. I looked out the window and saw a utility truck down the street working on the power lines, so that meant we couldn't watch your show. I wasn't too upset because it meant we would probably just make out for an hour and a half. "Does your oven run off gas or electricity?" he asked. "Gas," I said, a little confused that he was asking about our oven. He kicked off his shoes, which were really just a pair of my father's old shoes, and he started walking toward the kitchen. "I'm going to make you something," he said. "You know how to cook?" He opened the refrigerator and started moving things around. "Yep. I probably love to cook as much as you love to grow things." He took a few things out of the refrigerator and preheated the oven. I leaned against the counter and watched him. He wasn't even looking at a recipe. He was just pouring things into bowls and mixing them without even using a measuring cup. I had never seen my father lift a finger in the kitchen. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't even know how to preheat our oven. I kind of thought most men were like that, but watching Atlas work his way around my kitchen proved me wrong. "What are you making?" I asked him. I pushed my hands on the island and hoisted myself onto it. "Cookies," he said. He walked the bowl over to me and stuck a spoon in the mixture. He brought the spoon up to my mouth and I tasted it. One of my weaknesses is cookie dough, and this was the best I'd ever tasted. "Oh, wow," I said, licking my lips. He set the bowl down beside me and then leaned in and kissed me. Cookie dough and Atlas's mouth mixed together is like heaven, in case you're wondering. I made a noise deep in my throat that let him know how much I liked the combination, and it made him laugh. But he didn't stop kissing me. He just laughed through the kiss and it completely melted my heart. A happy Atlas was near mind-blowing. It made me want to uncover every single thing about this world that he likes and give it all to him. When he was kissing me, I wondered if I loved him. I've never had a boyfriend before and have nothing to compare my feelings to. In fact, I've never really wanted a boyfriend or a relationship until Atlas. I'm not growing up in a household with a great example of how a man should treat someone he loves, so I've always held on to an unhealthy amount of distrust when it comes to relationships and other people. There have been times I've wondered if I could ever allow myself to trust a guy. For the most part, I hate men because the only example I have is my father. But spending all this time with Atlas is changing me. Not in a huge way, I don't think. I still distrust most people. But Atlas is changing me enough to believe that maybe he's an exception to the norm. He stopped kissing me and picked up the bowl again. He walked it over to the opposite counter and started spooning dough onto 2 cookie sheets. "You want to know a trick to cooking with a gas oven?" he asked. I'm not sure I really ever cared about cooking before, but he somehow made me want to know everything he knew. It might have been how happy he looked when he talked about it. "Gas ovens have hot spots," he said as he opened the oven door and put the cookie sheets inside. "You have to be sure and rotate the pans so they'll cook evenly." He closed the door and pulled the oven mitt off his hand. He tossed it on the counter. "A pizza stone helps, too. If you just keep it in the oven, even when you aren't baking pizza, it helps eliminate the hot spots." He walked over to me and placed his hands on either side of me. The electricity kicked on right as he was pulling down the collar of my shirt. He kissed the spot on my shoulder he always loves kissing and slowly slid his hands up my back. I swear, sometimes when he's not even here I can still feel his lips on my collarbone. He was about to kiss me on the mouth when we heard a car pull into the driveway and the garage door start to open. I jumped off the island, looking around the kitchen frantically. His hands went up to my cheeks and he made me look at him. "Keep an eye on the cookies. They'll be finished in about 20 minutes. He pressed his lips to mine and then released me, rushing to the living room to grab his backpack. He made it out the back door right when I heard the engine to my father's car shut off. I started gathering all the ingredients together when my father walked into the kitchen from the garage. He looked around and then saw the light on in the oven. "Are you cooking?" he asked. I nodded because my heart was beating so fast, I was scared he'd hear the trembling in my voice if I responded out loud. I scrubbed for a moment at a spot on the counter that was perfectly clean. I cleared my throat and said, "Cookies. I'm baking cookies." He set his briefcase down on the kitchen table and then walked to the refrigerator and pulled out a beer. "The electricity has been out," I said. I was bored so I decided to bake while I waited for it to come back on. My father sat down at the table and spent the next 10 minutes asking me questions about school and if I thought about going to college. Occasionally when it was just the two of us, I saw glimpses of how a normal relationship with a father could be. Sitting at the kitchen table with him discussing colleges and career choices and high school. As much as I hated him most of the time, I still longed for more of these moments with him. If he could just always be the guy he was capable of being in these moments, things would be so much different. For all of us. I rotated the cookies like Atlas had said to do, and when they were finished, I pulled them out of the oven. I took one off the cookie sheet and handed it to my father. I hated that I was being nice to him. It almost felt like I was wasting one of Atlas's cookies. "Wow," my father said. "These are great, Lily." I forced a thank you, even though I didn't make them. I couldn't very well tell him that, though. "They're for school so you can only have one," I lied. I waited until the rest of them cooled and then I put them in a Tupperware container and took them to my room. I didn't even want to try one without Atlas, so I waited until later last night when he came over. "You should have tried one when they were hot," he said. "That's when they're the best." "I didn't want to eat them without you," I said. We sat on the bed with our backs against the wall and proceeded to eat half the bowl of cookies. I told him they were delicious, but failed to tell him they were by far the greatest cookies I'd ever eaten. I didn't want to inflate his ego. I kind of liked how humble he was. I tried to grab at another one, but he pulled the bowl away and put the lid back on it. "If you eat too many you'll make yourself sick and you won't like my cookies anymore." I laughed. "Impossible." He took a drink of water and then stood up, facing the bed. "I made you something," he said, reaching into his pocket. "More cookies?" I asked. He smiled and shook his head, then held out a fist. I lifted my hand and he dropped something hard in the palm of my hand. It was a small, flat outline of a heart, about 2 inches long, carved out of wood. I rubbed my thumb over it, trying not to smile too big. It wasn't an anatomically correct heart, but it also didn't look like the hand-drawn hearts. It was uneven and hollow in the middle. "You made this?" I asked, looking up at him. He nodded. "I carved it with an old whittling knife I found at the house. The ends of the heart weren't connected. They just curved in a little, leaving a little space at the top of the heart." I didn't even know what to say. I felt him sit back down on the bed, but I couldn't stop looking at it long enough to even thank him. "I carved it out of a branch," he said, whispering. "From the oak tree in your backyard. I swear, Ellen. I never thought I could love something so much. Or maybe what I was feeling wasn't for the gift, but for him." I closed my fist around the heart and then leaned over and kissed him so hard, he fell back onto the bed. I threw my leg over him and straddled him, and he grabbed my waist and grinned against my mouth. "I'm gonna carve you a damn house out of that oak tree if this is the reward I get," he whispered. I laughed. "You have to stop being so perfect," I told him. "You're already my favorite person, but now you're making it really unfair to all the other humans, because no one will ever be able to catch up to you." He brought his hand to the back of my head and rolled me until I was on my back and he was the one on top. "Then my plan is working," he said, right before kissing me again. I held on to the heart while we kissed, wanting to believe it was a gift for no reason at all. But part of me was scared it was a gift to remember him by when he leaves for Boston. I didn't want to remember him. If I had to remember him, it would mean he wasn't a part of my life anymore. I don't want him to move to Boston, Ellen. I know that's selfish of me because he can't keep living in that house. I don't know what I'm more afraid might happen. Watching him leave or selfishly begging him not to go. I know we need to talk about it. I'll ask him about Boston tonight when he comes over. I just didn't want to ask him last night because it was a really perfect day. Lily. Dear Ellen. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. He's moving to Boston. I don't really feel like talking about it. Lily. Dear Ellen. This is going to be a big one for my mother to hide. My father is usually pretty cognizant of hitting her where it won't leave a visible bruise. The last thing he probably wants is for people in the town to know what he does to her. I've seen him kick her a few times, choke her, hit her on the back and the stomach, pull her hair. The few times he's hit her on the face, it's always just been a slap, so the marks wouldn't stay for long. But never have I seen him do what he did last night. It was really late when they got home. It was a weekend, so he and my mom went to some community function. My father has a real estate company and he's also the town mayor, so they have to do things in the public a lot like go to charity dinners. Which is ironic, since my father hates charities. But I guess he has to save face. Atlas was already in my room when they got home. I could hear them fighting as soon as they walked through the front door. A lot of the conversation was muffled, but for the most part, it sounded like my father was accusing her of flirting with some man. Now I know my mother, Ellen. She would never do something like that. If anything, a guy probably looked at her and it made my father jealous. My mother is really beautiful. I heard him call her a whore and then I heard the first blow. I started to climb out of my bed, but Atlas pulled me back and told me not to go in there, that I might get hurt. I told him it actually helps sometimes. That when I go in there, my father backs off. Atlas tried to talk me out of it, but finally I got up and went out into the living room. Ellen. He was on top of her. They were on the couch and he had his hand around her throat, but his other hand was pulling up her dress. She was trying to fight him off and I just stood there, frozen. She kept begging him to get off her and then he hit her right across the face and told her to shut up. I'll never forget his words when he said, "You want attention? I'll give you some fucking attention." And that's when she got real still and stopped fighting him. I heard her crying, and then she said, "Please be quiet. Lily is here." She said, "Please be quiet. Please be quiet while you rape me, dear." Ellen, I didn't know one human was capable of feeling so much hate inside one heart. And I'm not even talking about my father. I'm talking about me. I walked straight to the kitchen and I opened a drawer. I grabbed the biggest knife I could find and I don't know how to explain it. It was like I wasn't even in my own body. I could see myself walking across the kitchen with the knife in my hand, and I knew I wasn't going to use it. I just wanted something bigger than myself that could scare him away from her. But right before I made it out of the kitchen, 2 arms went around my waist and picked me up from behind. I dropped the knife, and my father didn't hear it, but my mother did. We locked eyes as Atlas carried me back to my bedroom. When we were back inside my room, I just started hitting him in the chest, trying to get back out there to her. I was crying and doing everything I could to get him out of my way, but he wouldn't move. He just wrapped his arms around me and said, "Lily, calm down." He kept saying it over and over, and he held me there for a long time until I accepted that he wasn't gonna let me go back out there. He wasn't gonna let me have that knife. He walked over to the bed and grabbed his jacket and started putting on his shoes. "We'll go next door," he said. "We'll call the police." The police. My mother had warned me not to call the police in the past. She said it could jeopardize my father's career. But in all honesty, I didn't care at that point. I didn't care that he was the mayor or that everyone who loved him didn't know the awful side of him. The only thing I cared about was helping my mother, so I pulled on my jacket and went to the closet for a pair of shoes. When I stepped out of my closet, Atlas was staring at my bedroom door. It was opening. My mother stepped inside and quickly shut it, locking it behind her.